Hey guys, Michael the DC Multiverse Collector here, bringing you a look at the gold label DC Multiverse Superman vs. Doomsday 2-pack. Now this was a gold label in the United States, meaning it was exclusive to Target, and it came out sort of in June in the United States in Target from what I understand, and then it sort of just disappeared and didn't come out in Australia until just recently, and I think some other parts of the world just got this pack recently, so hopefully this late review is not so late for some of you in other parts of the world outside the US. I got this from Fet's Hideout Toys and Collectibles. Big thanks for sending me this awesome looking 2-pack. I'm really excited to check it out. So let's get into it. So you see that it's got 85 years of Superman as sort of like a celebratory commemorative release. It's a gold label, meaning it was a Target exclusive. Superman versus Doomsday. We see the figures in there. Now this is a mega figure and a regular size figure in a 2-pack, which is sort of a new thing for the Multiverse line, although it looks like we're going to be seeing that in the future a lot more. Obviously we had the 3-pack with Clayface and Batwoman and Batman. That was a 3-pack, so again something new. So there's some experimentation going on here. My first blush impression of this set is that Doomsday is massive looking, the box is really heavy. Superman, well, we'll talk about him, he's not as exciting, but we'll get to it. Turning it around, you'll see it just says Superman versus Doomsday. What it does not say is Death of Superman. Even though we're sort of thinking Death of Superman, it doesn't say that. Although when you do look at the art on the back of the box, Superman versus Doomsday, and then that iconic image of the cape flapping on the flagpole, obviously there with Doomsday cradling an unconscious or dead Superman. This is Death of Superman iconography, right? They're deliberately invoking this, but right away there's some problems, okay? Like this Doomsday in the art is clearly not the Doomsday we get in the box, which in a sense is fine, but in another sense, you know, it creates expectations I think that this set can't live up to, and it's not fair to set those expectations on this set when it's not trying to be that. So why is this art on the back? We'll get to that when we get into the sort of figures, but yeah, just something I wish McFarlane would be a little bit more careful about in their packaging and presentation is set expectations appropriately for what we're getting in the box, and then people won't be disappointed. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's get into it and see what these figures are actually like. Before we do that, if this video is in any way entertaining or useful or helpful, please give it a like. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Without any further ado though, let's get the box open and see how cool these figures are. So before we have a really close look at the figures, I just wanted to talk about the packaging and everything we get in it a little bit more. So you get this insert in the box, which has this beautiful sort of art of Metropolis. It's quite nice, and it kind of gives you the impression it's going to be a diorama piece. It's not really. I mean, the scale of the art kind of doesn't match the scale of the figures. It's not a real diorama, but the potential is there for some really cool background art, maybe some rubble, the ruins of the Daily Planet. You could do that, and you could actually use it as a diorama to present the figures in. But what McFarlane does is they put the display stands and the cards sort of behind a plastic bubble in these things, and to get the cards and display stands out, you kind of have to destroy it. So a bit of a missed opportunity, I think. I think McFarlane can do more to actually give these inserts a bit of meaning. Give us a diorama. Put these in like little plastic bags or something. Put them in a plastic bubble at the bottom that's sort of freestanding that you can just remove so you can preserve whatever beautiful art. And give us some nice dioramas. Something to consider, and I don't know why they do that. But anyway, that's the packaging. Let me move on. We get these display stands. They're the standard McFarlane display stands, and you know, I've talked about them. I'm sick of talking about them. You're sick of seeing them, so let's just move on. We also get two little hands for Superman. Aren't they cute? They're little flying hands in a set where he's fighting Doomsday. He's got little flight hands. Anyway, they're the same flight hands we've seen many times. They're quite nice, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. I don't know why he doesn't have fisticuff hands. Like, you know, Superman fighting Doomsday should have fists. Instead he comes with flight hands. Go figure. Anyway, we also get our display cards. Now you'll see that on the card, unlike the box, it says that this is from Superman, The Reign of Doomsday, which, as I understand it, is sort of like a little crossover event that happened after the death of Superman, where Doomsday went on a rampage and he fought various members of like the Superman family, or the extended Superman family. So this purports to be from The Reign of Doomsday, which, you know, you'll also see that on the Doomsday card. here. And this, as I understand it, this art on the card is from the Reign of Doomsday. It's one of the covers, correct me if I'm wrong. So it is a specific source material, but it does not match the figure. So my comments still stand that neither of these artworks match or reflect what we get in the box, and that's just a little bit weird. There are the data files. You can pause if you want to read about Superman and Doomsday. So without any further ado, let's have a look at the figures themselves. So here are Superman and Doomsday out of the box, and I've just put them side by side before we get in for a closer look, so you can kind of see how they scale with each other, how they look against each other. And my first impressions are that I'm really impressed with Doomsday's size. He's quite a substantial mega figure. Mega figures can vary in size. At first I thought Doomsday might be the size of the Devastator figure that we got way back in 2020 or 2021. I think it was 2020 in the Dark Knight's Metal wave. And, you know, for those of you who don't know, Devastator, who I'll bring in a minute, he's a cross between Batman and Doomsday. And I thought that this would be sort of a reuse and he'd be the same height. But no, he's actually quite a lot taller. We'll do a comparison later. Superman, of course, is the same Superman, the Hush Superman, on that infected Superman body buck that we've seen a million times. He's quite an average sized Superman, not enormous, but you put them together and I think the scale is just about right. Like Doomsday towers over Superman and it's quite dramatic, it's quite impressive. So I like that about it. Another thing I like about it at first blush is just the contrast in colours. I love the bright green of Doomsday's sort of boots and his pants, and then that sort of really grey, stony look. And then you sort of contrast all of that with the vibrant blue, red and yellow of this Hush Superman. I really like the colours on this guy. The red is maybe a little bit darker than I'd like, but it's still bright. And they just look really sort of dynamic and exciting together. But anyway, let's get into the figures. I think I'll start with Superman first because he's a little less interesting of the two figures, and then we'll move on to Doomsday. So coming in for a bit of a closer look at this Superman, which is essentially the Hush Superman, I think there's a lot of positive things to say for this figure. First off, the colours. I think the colours are excellent. I love this sort of more vibrant blue. I think it looks great. If we come in closer, you'll see it's got that Hush Superman head sculpt, which looks pretty good. It's very Jim Lee evocative. I think it's kind of sculpted quite nicely, and I think the paint is very, very crisp. I like the hair. That's all true of the original Hush figure, which I actually don't own, but I've seen many videos about it. So look, for someone who doesn't own a Hush Superman at all, I'm actually quite glad to get this. It's quite a respectable looking Superman overall, and it sort of brings something unique with the tattered cape and the battle damage. I will say though that I think that the battle damage itself is pretty lackluster. You'll see Superman has a little bit of blood painted on his mouth. It looks okay, but all the damage to his suit, like it just looks like minor scuffs and scratches. These paint applications are really, really conservative. You know, I think we could have used some sculpted battle damage, or even just a little bit more exciting, paint job. Those of you who've read The Death of Superman know that by the end of that fight, Superman is basically like naked. You know, half of his suit has been ripped off. He's got exposed chest, exposed arms. This looks more like Superman's had like a pillow fight with Doomsday and has got some flesh wounds. I don't know, it's a little bit conservative, and the reason for that is that they just wanted to take the Hush Superman and apply a few bits of paint. I think they could have done a bit more, and you'll see that this that's meant to be flesh tone on that sort of battle damage. It kind of looks yellow. I don't know, it could use a bit of touching up. It could use a little bit more drama. You'll see that, I'll take his base off, you'll see that the boots have been painted a sort of darker red there. I don't know whether that's to suggest that the boots are dirty, that blood's pooling in his boots or something, but it's pretty conservative. Yeah, I don't know, more could have been done. And then you look at the cape, and I think this might be the same cape as the infected Superman. It's a really nice sculpt. I love all the tearing. It's extremely dramatic. But a couple of problems. Where is that yellow S symbol that's on the cape that's on the flagpole in the art? If this is Death of Superman or inspired by Death of Superman, it really should have that, Superman symbol. And I just don't know why they don't do this. It's a really famous, iconic part of his sort of costume and iconography, and to like, it's like not having the bat symbol or like the S on the front, the emblem. Like, it's just a part of it, and they should really get with the program and start giving us the S on the cape. That's just my opinion. But given that you'll be posing the figure from the front most of the time, I think it's a really handsome looking Superman, and by handsome I just mean generally attractive. The paint's all nice. I mean, we've seen this figure before in the Hush Superman. That was a good figure. And this is a good figure too. It's on that infected Superman body buck. It's not one of my favorite body bucks for Superman. His legs look kind of spindly, and his chest is like hugely bulbous. Like, he just looks like he's got little matchstick legs, but it's not terrible. It's just, it could be better. And I like the Action Comics 1000 Superman a little bit more. I'll show you some comparisons with him in a moment. As I said, it's a shame that he doesn't come with fist hands. He only comes with this sort of gesture hand and just a nothing hand, when he really should have come with fists. I mean, he should be in a knockdown brawl with Doomsday. He should have fists. So really mystifying decision there. I'm not going to go over the articulation of this guy because he's exactly the same as every other infected body buck Superman that we've ever had, right? You've seen this a zillion times. It's got average to good articulation. It'll do what you want it to do, right? And it is what it is. I think more interestingly, let's get to some comparisons and see how he fares against some other Superman and Superman adjacent characters. So, let's get stuck into those comparisons in earnest. First, let's bring in Action Comics 1000 Superman. Now, this is the Superman that came in the Atomic Skull 2-pack. It's the same as the one that came out like in the first year of the line, but with a brighter colour scheme that more closely resembles the Hush colour scheme. And I think this is the most attractive looking Superman figure that McFarlane has released to date. I really like the proportions of this Superman quite a bit. You can see that it's a more slender look than this Hush infected body buck. I like it better. I do like the sort of more, animated look of the head sculpt on Hush, maybe a little bit better. But like, either way, if you don't have a Superman in your collection, I'd go for this one, or the regular Hush Superman. Obviously, this is a more niche sort of, stylized look with the battle damage and stuff, but that's how they look together. Next, here we have the Rebirth Supergirl. You can see they have a very similar colour scheme, although Supergirl's got sort of the gold paint on her emblem, and which is painted and not sculpted, but I think by and large these two look very, very good together. And here is Connor Con-El Superboy. I think these two look pretty good together as well. I think the art style, if you look at the head sculpt, the way the faces are sculpted and painted actually goes quite nicely together. And here's the John Kent Superboy. Now, I've not been a huge fan of this John Kent figure. I don't think it quite captures the spirit of that character. It's not a terrible figure, but not one of my favorites. Having said that, I think these two scale together quite nicely. Maybe John Kent is maybe a little bit too tall in comparison, but certainly in terms of their physique, there's a big contrast between them, and I think that's quite effective. And here we have Superboy Prime. Now, this Superboy Prime uses the Action Comics 1000 body buck as a base and sort of heavily modifies it. It's still a pretty cool figure. I actually really like the head sculpt quite a bit. It kind of works for a serious Clark Kent as well. You'll notice that his skin tone is much paler than Superman's here. And maybe he's a little bit tall, but by and large, I think, again, these two go together quite well. And here we have Superman alongside Eradicator. Now, these two share the exact same body buck, but obviously a very different paint scheme and a very different sculpt for the cape. You can kind of see just how much mileage they've got out of this body buck, to create some very different looking characters. You will see that these two figures have the exact same gesture hand on their left hand. So yeah, but Eradicator did come with a fist hand, which this Superman does not. So make of that what you will. Finally, let's have a look at Superman alongside Ultraman from the Crime Syndicate Build-A-Figure wave. What is interesting here is that Ultraman is actually heavily based on the infected body buck in the torso and the arms, but his legs are considerably taller. which sort of stretches the proportions of the figure out and makes him look a little bit leaner. You'll see here that if you compare where the waistline is here versus the waistline here, it's almost like half a centimeter raised, which gives him a longer, more athletic appearance in the legs. And I think if you look at them together, the Ultraman figure is just so much better proportioned. So I don't know why they sort of persist with these stubbier, skinnier, shorter legs, but anyway, it is what it is. Turning now to Doomsday, the Doomsday mega figure that we've all been waiting for. Well, I've been waiting for a Doomsday mega figure in this line for quite some time, and here he is. And now, at first blush, I was concerned that he would be a fairly straight up reuse of this Devastator figure here, which came out very early in the line. Like I said earlier, Devastator is a multiversal mix, or a dark multiverse mix between Batman and Doomsday. I thought these figures would share a lot more sculpting than they actually do. If you really break it down, the extent of the reuse is less extensive than you might think. So first up, it looks like they have the same lower torso, the same upper torso, but modified. So Doomsday has some sort of bone pieces stuck on top of there, but it looks like it's the same basic sculpt with a bit of embellishment. Although, it's so changed that it might as well be a new piece. Obviously, they have completely different sculpts for their shoulder bones, completely different. These are sort of glued on, you can tell, to the base body, which is fine, but completely different. Obviously, their heads are completely different. They both have these articulated jaws, but they are sculpted completely differently, so there's no reuse there. Where you find most of the reuse, actually, is in the arms. So the arms are mostly reused. So these shoulder pieces on both sides are the same. Obviously, there's a very different paint job applied, and then it gets into the lower arm, and that looks identical, except they each have, let me rotate this around, they each have bone pieces glued on that are completely different sculpts. So it's the same basic sculpt underneath with different pieces glued on top, which makes sense, and I think that's fine. The hands, from what I can tell, are exactly the same. There is a fist hand for the left hand and a grippy hand for the right hand. And they're identical, and I think they're identical in every way. What you'll notice is that Devastators are painted much more dramatically than Doomsdays, which is sort of more subtle. And I think where the reuse hurts Doomsday, the only place I think that Doomsday really, really suffers is in the arms. Let me bring this in for a closer look. You'll see that Devastator here, it looks like his clothes are torn, and you see the shreds of the clothing sort of painted on there. Doomsday has the exact same sculpt, but they haven't bothered to paint sort of the shredded clothing. Now, I do not know why, for the life of me, they didn't just paint those green to make it look like Doomsday has burst out of his containment suit, which you can kind of see here from his pants. He's burst out of his containment suit, he's running amok. If they just painted those green, it would have not only been faithful to the source material, but it would have, covered over that sort of awkward reuse where it just looks like he's got clothing melted into his skin. It's a bit weird. It's a minor gripe, but it speaks to a lack of, I don't know, carefulness or thought. Like, most of the figure has been carefully re-engineered. They did not reuse these pieces. There's a lot of new sculpt work here, which I think is really admirable. Why not just paint this? If you're not going to sculpt a new upper arm, just paint it. Go that little bit of extra mile. Another thing to think about in terms of these two figures is their scale. Obviously, this was a standard release figure. This is a mega figure, and I think that bears out in the size difference. In terms of weight, they're actually about the same. This is an extremely heavy figure, and I can't believe we only paid $20 for him back in the day. This is a much more expensive mega figure. He's not much more heavy in terms of plastic. There is more plastic here, but he feels a little bit hollower, so that it kind of nets out in terms of the weight. So taller, but I don't necessarily know we're getting that much more. Certainly not double. If he's double the cost of Devastator, it just shows what's happened to the line over time. I think Todd was over-delivering in those early years, and now things have settled down, and inflation and the cost of everything, and I get it. So it is what it is. But yeah, that's the comparison between those two. Let me get Devastator out of here and let's have a closer look at Doomsday himself. I think overall this is a really good looking Doomsday. The elephant in the room, of course, is that this is not the Death of Superman or Reign of Doomsday. This is a different style of Doomsday. He's got this sort of top knot going on here. You'll see it's sculpted pretty nicely. No complaints about it. It's like a softer material, but it's not the sort of classic looking Doomsday that I think everyone expected and wanted. And you'll see the head sculpt here. It looks tremendous, and I think it's painted and sculpted really, really well, but it doesn't have those sort of bone fragments going over his eyes, which is this classic Death of Superman look, and it's what's on the art card. So I suspect we are getting another Doomsday mega figure somewhere down the road that will look more closely like the Death of Superman version, and this is just an excuse to sell us another Doomsday. And you know me, I'm a sucker, I'll be there day one. But in terms of what this is, like if you can put aside the lack of faithfulness to the source material that it's meant to be from, it's a really good looking Doomsday. I think overall, the biggest knock on this figure in terms of the overall aesthetics, maybe the proportions. I feel like given how tall he is, how long these legs are, proportionately, I think he could be a little bit wider and broader in the chest, a little bit more sort of bulky and heroic looking. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. It's not bad. I just think maybe his legs are so long that he needs a bigger chest. And I also think the bone fragments here could have been painted maybe a bit more contrasting. So if his skin was a bit grayer and the bones were a bit whiter, he would have that sort of more impressive sort of Doomsday look. He kind of looks a little bit neutral here. He looks a little bit Bed Bath & Beyond. Do you know what I mean? He looks like a little bit like Calming Hampton's Beach House. There's lots of beige, lots of grey. I don't know, I just feel like it could be a little bit more dramatic. I do really like the sculpt of these sort of shorts here. The containment suit parts here have been painted really nicely in a silver. Actually, I'm not sure if that's paint. I think that is paint, and it looks quite nice. And obviously there's a texture on the shorts, which looks great. Some people have said that could be like a darker green. It could be, maybe a more bluey dark green, but I think what's there is okay. I really like his boots. I think they've been sculpted really, really nicely, although I think it could have used some extra paint here. I just think they're a lick of paint or maybe a wash away from being like great, but as it is, they look fine. Yeah, so I mean, let's have a look at the back. Yeah, it's pretty good. I really like how this is all torn here. Looks like he's burst out of his suit. Yeah, I mean, it's a good looking Doomsday. Is it like the Doomsday of my dreams? Probably not. I think that is still to come. But like for a first crack at the figure in mega figure form, I think this guy is really, really cool, and I'm really, really happy to have this figure. And look, if I had been doing my top 10, tomorrow, he might have squeaked into like an honorable mention, or maybe, number 10 at an outside pinch. But yeah, he's a really cool figure. Let's get into the articulation, because I think there actually is a fair bit to talk about. So in terms of articulation, you've got the head, which can rotate. It actually can make it 360 degrees. Actually, yeah, no, it can. There's a bit of resistance, but you can do it if you really want to. He has tilt from left to right, which is actually really nice, especially for a big boy like this. And he has an articulated jaw, which I wish more figures would come with jaw articulation. It really allows you to get a lot more personality into your posing. So I really, really like that. More of that for these sort of like growling, snarling figures, please, McFarlane. Now at the arms, things get a bit dicey. So this is have to be one of his stiffest joints at his arm. Like I have tried to bend his arm up into a T pose. I cannot do it on this arm. Every time I put too much pressure, the arm just pops out of the socket. So that's really annoying. Whereas with his right arm, see, I can actually, look at that. So I actually popped it out of the socket. This one goes up and down on a very, very stiff ratchet. This one, I might have to heat up with a hairdryer. It is not moving. At the elbows, he gets sort of 90 degrees, just single jointed, obviously. Rotation at the wrist there, and there is a hinge. So there's a very subtle hinge here, see? Very small range of motion there. Obviously, it spins all the way around, but it hits that sculpt up here of the bones and it pops out really, really easily. So like, it just really limits what you can do. It's just not the most dynamic set of arms I've ever seen, but you know, that's not uncommon for a mega figure, I guess. At the diaphragm, he spins around 360 degrees, and the same at the waist, so that's pretty good. Forward crunch, not much. Back, quite a bit. You get some gappiness, but it's okay, I guess. Now, the diaper piece here is extremely soft, like it's one of the softest diapers ever, which allows him to do crazy splits that Doomsday should not be doing. It kind of looks hideous. There's a little bit of rotation here, but it's not much. You'll also notice that his legs jiggle, and that's because you look at the legs and they're on this tiny little joint. Like, for the size of the leg, the engineering seems really, really small. I think that's because it's based on the Devastator buck, and like it just should be a bit bigger and it should be a bit more engineered. Like these ratchets that do the legs, like let me show you. They're not very stiff at all. So he shakes around like that, like a maraca. Yeah, so it's just very weak ratchet at the joints, which makes him feel a little bit unstable. On the plus side, you know, he can do the can really, really well. Yeah, single jointed knees, just less than 90 degrees. Sorry, a bit more than 90 degrees. Can't do much more than that. One interesting thing about the articulation is this guy has knee articulation. So no boot cut, but a knee swivel. Look at that. Have you ever seen that? Can you think of another figure in this line that swivels at the knees like that? I can't immediately think of one. I'm sure there is. I'm just not thinking of it. But yeah, that's pretty unique. And then he's got a hinge at the foot, back and forward. No toe articulation. Very rare for a McFarlane figure to have zero toe articulation. So that's interesting, I think. And as far as I can tell, yeah, there is a rocker. Okay, so he has a rocker up, down, and at the knee. So like, overall, you can get this guy into some like fairly interesting poses, but he's not ultra dynamic. And the problem that you get with this guy is that his legs are just so loose that he's not going to hold that many poses unless he's like really, really well balanced. So to get our comparisons underway, first up, we have Lex Luthor, the classic Superman arch enemy, and you can see Doomsday absolutely dwarfs Lex. And here we have General Zod, and here we have Bizarro, and the Atomic Skull, and here's Injustice 2 Brainiac. And finally, having a look at Doomsday alongside some mega figures in the line, here he is against the Anti-Monitor mega figure. They're roughly the same height. Doomsday's a bit taller, but Doomsday has certainly got a lot more detail on him, and he's heavier and overall takes up a lot more volume and is generally a little bit more impressive on display. And here is Doomsday next to the Mongol mega figure. You can see Mongol, despite being, you know, a fairly average height for a mega figure, is significantly taller than Doomsday. He's taller in the legs. You'll see that Mongol's waist is up here. You know, he's overall just a much bigger, taller character than Doomsday. I query whether that scale's correct. Would anyone who's more knowledgeable than me be able to tell me in the comments? Is Mongol meant to be bigger than Doomsday? But anyway, he is in McFarlane.
So what do I think of this gold label Superman vs Doomsday 2-pack? Well, I like it a lot. Is it perfect? No, not really. Doomsday is pretty cool. He's a great big mega figure. I love mega figures, but he is partially based on an older mold, and I feel like his proportions could be better, and his articulation is only just okay. Superman himself, he's alright as well. He doesn't quite look like he should if this is meant to reflect a Death of Superman style figure, but as a Hush figure with some battle damage, you could do a lot worse. I like the Jim Lee inspired head sculpt, I like the colours, and even though he uses that tired old infected Superman body buck, it's still a decent looking figure overall, and I think the two figures actually look really good together. Now, it's not the ideal Death of Superman 2-pack that you would want, but it fits the bill if you're looking for a decent looking Superman and Doomsday to go at it on your shelf. As a total package, I think this set could have used a little more in the way of accessories, perhaps a nice diorama display base, or a torn cape on a flagpole accessory. But as it is, it's a pretty good set, and I'm happy to have picked it up. So if you liked this video or enjoyed it, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And until next time, happy collecting, and thanks for watching.
This video was brought to you with the support of Fet's Hideout Toys and Collectibles. For a great range of toys from DC Multiverse to Black Series to Marvel Legends, Hot Toys and more, visit Fet's Hideout Toys and Collectibles and use the offer code DCDUDE, that's DCDUDE, for an exclusive discount month to month. Could be 5% off or $5 off at checkout. Try the code, see what you get, place an order with Fets, and you won't be disappointed. And we thank Fets for their continued support of this channel.